Hi everybody, welcome to Mind Prosperity. It's so excited to see you today. I'm very excited to introduce to you my interview that I had with Johannes de Villiers, and I know this is going to help you. I know this is going to encourage you. I know this is going to teach you a lot of valuable lessons in life on mindfulness, meditation, and resilience. I want to encourage you, get a pen, get a notebook, take some notes, because I know the things that are going to be said today are things that you're going to want to remember for the rest of your life. I want to encourage you also on our channel to like this video, to subscribe, leave a comment, leave some questions. Maybe later we can answer them. And also check out our other videos that we have done on Mind Prosperity. We speak a lot about emotional intelligence and mental wealth in the workplace, in groups, for individuals. And also I do these sessions in the workplace with groups, with individuals, either live or on social media, however you prefer. So if you want to know more, please email me. Please enjoy this interview that I'm going to have with Johannes de Villiers. We will see you soon again. Goodbye. Good day everybody, and welcome yet again to another Mind Prosperity session. We have a guest today in the audience. I'm going to introduce Johannes Bertus de Villiers to you guys. He is a writer, he's a speaker, and he's the first person, as far as I know, who wrote a book on mindfulness in Afrikaans. Am I correct?
Pretty sure who did it explicitly. I think some people might have snuck it in spaces, but I think so, yeah, that's my claim to fame.
Okay, great. Yeah. Well, we're so happy to have you here today. We are so excited. I'm writing a book as well. So what happened once is, like, I was writing about mindfulness, and I know what mindfulness is, but I didn't feel like I could explain myself very well. So I actually told my editor to take it out. We'll write about mindfulness later when I really have the hang of it and I can explain it in my own words. So let's hope after today
I might help you get there. Huh? I might help you get there. It can be it's an odd time. It is a term that is often overused, and I think used for so many things. You'll see there are books about mindful dieting and mindful sports, and there's a book about the US military does mindfulness training for the soldiers now. There's mindful shooting at people. So mindfulness can mean all sorts of things, and I think it has often been slightly it's been taken too wide, so it's good to sometimes come back to what it initially meant.
Mindfulness eating does that to me. It takes me too wide.
Yeah. That's mindless eating does that. One of the nice things about writing a book about it in Afrikaans is that the vocabulary around it did not really exist yet. So you had to really think of what is it that you're working with and say things as if for the first time. You really get back to basics, which was kind of a nice experience. It helped me quite a lot in figuring it out.
I want to show the people. Like I said, this is in Afrikaans. I know a big part of our audience is Afrikaans. Those of you who cannot speak Afrikaans, we are not going to translate everything, but today will be in English. Don't worry. Here's a book called, daar kom 'n Afrikaanse aksent uit, terwyl ek Engels probeer praat. This is a book called Kalmte and die malle gejaag, and this is the first book you wrote.
This was the first one, This was in 2018 it was published.
Wow. So it's like all your books are quite recent. So this is a book that Johannes has available for you guys. We're going to speak now about where you can get the books. Blydskap, happiness, and apparently I heard you can tell people in 55 seconds how to be happy, right?
Yeah, you're just saying that to wind me up. I cannot, no. But I can give you a few tips. I have a 5 bullet point list of things we can get to.
Is it in the book?
It is in there, but we can divulge it.
Okay, so Blydskap is a book that he has available. And then his latest book, and this is one that we all are very, very excited about, Meer as jou seer kry. Meer as jou seer kry is also a book that is available now. Johannes, tell people, where can they get your books?
Well, anywhere, to be honest. It's in bargain books and exclusive books. The easiest way is to email me, Johannes, at
the email address will be on the screen.
That's the spelling of Blydskap, .com. But you can get it on Loot and Takealot and exclusives.com and those kinds of things. I think a nice way into what mindfulness is, if I tell you a little something about the process of writing this first book, because that was, I think, kind of links to it.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had to write the first Afrikaans book about mindfulness. So I thought, instead of writing my own soppy story, I'd been sort of working in that field for about 16, 17 years at that point, So I thought, instead of writing about myself, I would go and look up all the wise people that I've met over the years who
Thank
work
you so
in
much that you did. We really
sorry I didn't have time for you as well. But then I sat down with each one of them for 2 hours and said, just explain to me your wisdom and your where you came from and how you encountered this and what it meant to your life. Yeah, and this was everything from psychologists to dominis to just regular people, homemakers, everything, and it worked.
So I just want to say, if you're not a psychologist or a reverend, you're a regular person.
Yeah. So whoever else doesn't fall to those categories. And then the second book and third book, we basically did the same thing. So it was kind of nice. It's like my journey speaking to all the wise people I knew about. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What I found looking back onto it, and this wasn't something I planned, but just looking back at who the selection had turned out to be, it was amazing how many of these people who were really wise, when they told me where their wisdom had come from, told me a story about how they had almost died, or even actually died in one or two spaces. Yeah, so this thing, it's called like a near-death experience. Mm-hmm. Like 4 out of these people had those, which is weird because it's quite a proportionally out of the population. Mm-hmm. So it had to have something to do with it. The one was a lady that I spoke to who had literally, she'd been on the gurney, that trolley key that they take you into the operation, the room for surgery. It was emergency surgery. She literally lay there and she blew out the last breath and she didn't breathe back in, and then she just sort of floated away. But they revived her eventually. And then the other one was a man, he was in the Serbian-Bosnian war there in old Yugoslavia, literally knelt. He'd been captured. He was a spy, captured by the Serbians. They made him kneel next to a mass grave, put a gun to the back of his head and shot him. And he woke up in this grave among all the dead bodies and everything. And somehow the gun hadn't fired right, and he was still alive. And the third one was somebody who'd almost died in the mountains. He was lost there with his son and came back. But what I found interesting about these people, what they tell me is, many of us have a sort of a gap between the life we live and the life we feel we should have been living. Yeah, but I should have been a person who had a better marriage, or I should have been more successful, I should have been calmer, or I should have been a better speaker, or I should have been thinner or more muscular or something. And then we have the life how we actually are, And with these people who sort of came to the edge of death, that gap kind of falls away. The life that they should have been somehow dissolves. Yeah. And they realize that this entire life they have is a gift. It's precious. And they stop resenting it for not being that other life. So this lady who was on this gurney, she says, now she'd be at home and her children would be making sarcastic comments about her, and she would think to herself, I'm so blessed to be able to be here and hear my children make sarcastic comments. Wow. I'm getting to the point how this links to mindfulness. And the other, she would say, usually I used to have to clean my floors so I can get it over with, so I can get on with life. Now I'll be cleaning my floors and I'm saying, I'm here, I'm alive to clean the floors. So it's like these people, it's almost like they're in a rugby match, and it's, when the final whistle should have blown but it hasn't yet blown. What do you call that again? Like injury time, or what's it called? Injury time?
Extra time. Yeah.
Extra time. And I shouldn't actually be here, so every moment counts, every moment is precious. And somehow through that they drop into this thing of mindfulness. So what mindfulness means to me is, if I sort of give people a short summary, it's the art of no longer resenting your life, no longer wishing your life away. People say mindfulness is, please interrupt me if I speak too much, I get excited about this, but people say mindfulness is living in the now. Yeah, there are all these books, the power of now, the this of now, the that now, and they say things like, forget the past, it's gone, and don't worry about the future, it hasn't happened, just live now. But I think that's sometimes a bit too simplistic and slightly unrealistic. I mean, if your past is here with you, if you have like trauma and stuff, it sits in your body, you carry your past with you. You are a product of what happened in the past. It's not like you can cut that, and the future is important. So I rather say that mindfulness for me is living in reality, because for me the main gap is not this distinction between the present and the past, or the present and the future. It's between the life that actually is and the way that we think life should have been. And so mindfulness is saying, instead of constantly going into my mind and the story of what should have been, I should have been dressed in a red shirt, I should have had more hair, I should have, my you know what I mean? I should have had better habits. I should have had, just to take a moment in your life and say, what is there actually and what is? And how can I live with this? Because we tend to live in that other world which only exists in our imagination, to be honest. And then we neglect this actual world. And it's not about a feeling good thing. You might sit in this life that you have and it might actually not be a very nice life. You might be sick, you might be in a miserable marriage, you might be ugly, you might be who knows what. But this is the only life you have. And what do we want to do? We want to be kinder. We want to make change. We want to grow and all of that. But we tend to be stuck in that life that should have been, we say, when I can attain that life, then I will be able to be kind and to grow. So once I am thin, once I've got a great marriage, once I've been promoted to management, once I have R1 million in the bank, once I'm healthy again, But if you wait till that, then you're never going to get to the point where you can actually be of value. So if you can say, here's the life, this is the reality I'm in, it's imperfect, but this is what I've been given to work with, then you kind of come into this life and it starts to become the springboard from where you can move. It's all very abstract now, but I hope does it kind of make sense.
I want to ask, is there then a big connection between mindfulness and gratefulness?
I think very much. Yeah, it's very much that. It's a sense of being aware. So there's a beautiful quote by the poet W.B. Yeats, who says, life is full of miracles, patiently waiting for your senses to grow sharper. Wow. What he means by that is, when a miracle, wonderful things are happening all day, your heart beats just all by itself. That's quite amazing. There's beauty everywhere, but we tend not to see it. And at the end of the day, I say, Albert, any miracles happened in your day? You'll say, no, it was kind of a dull day. But you're not saying no miracles. You didn't see any miracles. You didn't notice them. And so gratitude happens not when good things happen, but when you develop the capacity to be able to be aware of the good things that happened. So you are wearing this, what do you call this item? Is it a hoodie? Is it a sweater? Let's say sweatshirt. So
that's the most difficult question anybody has ever asked me on my channel.
What is this thing? Let's say it's a sweatshirt. So I can see in my mind, Albert, it's like a year ago, maybe 6 months ago, he's in Woolies or somewhere, Zara, and he's in the fitting room, looking in the mirror, putting on this thing, and he's thinking to himself, yes, I like this thing. It sits so comfortably. If I can wear this thing, I'll have life. I'll have sorted life out. People will like me if I wear this thing. I'll like myself. I'll be more confident. And you felt like that. When you wear something the first time, you kind of like, hey, look at me, world. I'm grateful for this thing. It makes me happy. And the second time, maybe less than the third time. And now you're wearing it for maybe the 50th time or the 55th time. And it's kind of...
This is the 67th time.
Oh, okay, you count. Okay, so, and you probably don't, it might be not the case with you, but in general, maybe you like, okay, what am I going to put on today? Is it hot? Is it cold? I'll put this thing, it works, and you go on. It's the same thing, but you've kind of lost the ability to notice it and to be grateful for it. Yeah. So you're not mindfully engaged with it anymore. Now, this is a silly example, but
that's good.
But extend that to your children or your spouse, or the fact that you have a mattress to sleep on, which is not a given for most people, or the fact that you have all your limbs, or one of them still, or and I think that's where the gratitude thing. So when I do mindfulness trainings with people, we have this habit, and we say, when we get together, we start not by saying hello, but we go around the circle and we say, everybody says something that you noticed today to be grateful for. And then the first time you do it, people are flustered because we had a crap day, I don't notice anything, But then by the second week, they kind of know they're going to be asked, so they're a little bit more aware. They kind of look around, what can I see to be grateful for? There's somebody smiled at me in traffic, or
somebody smiled at me, like that ever happened.
Yeah, you know what? Or something, and then they come and they tell you, okay, something happened. And then by like the fourth or fifth time they come, I start noticing something. Everybody kind of like goes through their day to try and find something and their senses suddenly wake up, and they notice these things. And their life didn't change because these things were there before, but something in here changed. So, and that is basically a mindfulness a mindfulness practice, you know. So the one guy, he became obsessed with how grateful he was for the ability to open his refrigerator door. Like, you open the refrigerator door how many times a day? But he could describe it like poetry. He would say, when you walk up to a refrigerator, it's like there's like this apnea moment, like you hold your breath for half a second, like, what am I going to find? And then your hand, the thing is built so your hand just kind of like folds over it like properly, you know. And then when you open the refrigerator door, there's like this moment there. And then suddenly there's this rush of cold air over your skin. And then he stands there for a second like, and then when he opens it, he's kind of disappointed because there's nothing much in it. And you close the bloody thing again. But that's kind of like a thing, you know. And then you notice, you know, I mean, the fact that you can, like, just shortly before I came here, I turned a knob on my wall and warm water shot out of a pipe above my head and ran down my back. If I had to tell my great-great-grandfather that such a thing would exist, it would not even have made sense to him. It was like, what is that thing? He had to walk down somewhere and light a fire. That's why they only bathed like once a month, because there was too much of a schlep.
We don't have an excuse.
Yeah, we have no excuse. And so if I'm teaching people mindfulness at first, I'll say just drop little pins in your day. Put a little reminder to ring on random times on your phone, or stick WhatsApp, you know, what's a post-it notes in your house. So that when you see one, just stop for a second and say, what is there in this moment to be grateful for? Now, this is not something you just do because then it'll all feel so nice, you know, then it'll feel so nice. It will feel nice sometimes, but sometimes it'll also call you back into very difficult moments, you know. You're in a cancer ward, or you're in the middle of a fight with somebody that you care for, or you're looking through your bank statements and it's destitute. But you'll be there in that moment. And you'll be, you know, and I think there's a lot of things that you work with linked to this. Then you'll be capable of working from that space, because you're not empowered if you're absent from your life. You're not able to do anything, you know. And the world needs you. Sometimes it's not, because sometimes saying, oh, I want to come back to the moment so I can feel nice, can be a very self-centered thing. And we need to care for ourselves, nothing wrong with it. But my thing is also, if you come back to the world, to this moment, you can actually hear the voice of the world that needs your help. You know, when I'm stuck in my mind, I'm not just oblivious to things to be grateful for, I'm also oblivious to the many people that I pass each day who need my kindness and who need my compassion and my assistance. But when I'm here, I'm able to really look at them. Now I'm at the front of the queue in Checkers, and the lady behind the till is maybe not as friendly as I would have preferred, but I can actually see her and see, oh, there might be some hurt here that I might not have noticed. I need to tread kindly and carefully.
No, I think that's very important.
Yeah.
Very good. Two things I want to ask you quickly.
Yeah.
Number one, is there a connection between, like I asked, is there a connection between gratefulness and mindfulness?
Yeah.
Is there a connection between awareness and mindfulness?
Yeah. So mindfulness is a kind of an awareness, isn't it? Because it's I tend to think of our attention as a spotlight, you know, and you can direct that. So if you're out in the night, there's all sorts of things that you kind of vaguely know about all around you, but the thing that you put your spotlight on is the thing that you take notice of. And for me, it's like, where's a spotlight of my mind? Because often my mind spotlight is in this fight that I had in grade 3 with somebody that I'm still angry about, or it's in a fight, a difficult conversation with my boss that I'm planning for tomorrow, or it's in this fantasy that I should have played for Grey College first team rugby or something, which didn't happen, yeah? And that's kind of useless. I mean, like even the past and the future thinks, okay, something happened, do a post-mortem, but when you're sort of going through it the 15th time, you kind of get lost, yeah? So can I turn that awareness to to what's actually happening? The French, yeah? And I know you parlais a little bit of Français, but in French there's a lovely expression, tell me if you can understand, it's called l'esprit de l'escalier. L'esprit de l'escalier, and it means the spirit of the staircase. Now, what could that mean? So, French people, they mostly live on the upper story.
I was thinking of the movie The Grudge when you just say that phrase.
It's nothing to do with it. So if you want to go visit a French person, you have to climb up the staircase and then go in their door, yeah? And French people, they're very warm-blooded. So inevitably, during a visit, you're going to end up in a screaming match, What can you say? Like a kind of a thing. And then sometimes you lose the screaming match. Yeah, sometimes you lose this argument, yeah, and then you leave and you slam the door behind them and you're on the staircase, and as you're on the staircase going down, you think, that's what I should have said. But now it's too late, you can't go back, so now you lie in your bed all night and you replay this argument, and at the end you're saying slag this person so badly, because you know that thing, eh? This is how I should have said an argument, and you have it like 15 times over, and that's the kind of thing where you get stuck, like that. It's now, there's nothing you can do. Okay, you phone the person then and say it and get it over with and then go on, but we get stuck in that thing. I mean, you've been speaking about a rumination, lately.
Yeah.
Is a theme you've been covering quite a lot. And so instead of being there, can I take that spotlight and say, well, what is more useful and more productive here? Where can I bring it back to? But it's not just awareness. No, you can be aware and be doing very mean thing. If you think about a person who's a burglar who has to climb in your house and not make a sound and not knock anything over, they must be really aware, yeah? Really concentrated, but that's not the awareness that we want people to go to. Nay, if you want to be very mean, you have to be very aware to think of a nice cutting remark so you can hurt people. So mindfulness, the technical definition of it is awareness of what is happening as it is happening without judgment. So it is bringing, it's taking that kind of mean judgment of resenting life and wanting it to be different away, and just being here in a sort of a kinder, softer way. Because what I find happens, and this is a little bit of a leap of faith, but most people say this happens, and I can't quite explain how, but usually when you take away the judgment of the moment, what comes up is a sense of kindness and compassion. If I'm here and I'm no longer fighting life because it's not what I expected it to be, what comes in is a kind of a gentleness, and I can be and I can hear. Because people, I think, are inherently, for the most part, kind of kind. But this kindness gets suppressed by the weight of all this noise,
Yeah.
And if you take some of that away, something better sometimes blooms.
As you were speaking now, there's something that I kind of talk a lot about in my sessions, and that I write a lot about, and that is your imagination, and the role the imagination plays in the life, and kind of like how if you keep on imagining something, your life can go in that direction.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this whole story that you spoke about, the staircase, and I should have done this and I should have done this. Do you think a person can like kind of prepare your imagination into mindfulness? Maybe wake up in the morning, imagine the day, decide to be mindful, something like that?
So the wonderful thing, and I'm sure you're kind of aware of it over the last 25, 30 years, they say there's two fields of science that we're really sort of growing, it's really expanding enormously at the moment. The one is the knowledge of deep space, exoplanets and those kinds of things.
I plan it carefully.
Yeah. And the other one is our knowledge of the human brain, which is really increased. Yeah, I'm getting to your question. This is you're talking about imagination. Can you set intentions on things? So we used to not quite understand. We knew there's like this grey lump in your skull and things happen. It's wonderful, but of late they've been able to really go in there. Yeah, and one of the things that we've realized. So this from when you were young. We were always told a person is born with X number of brain cells, and these kind of die off during your life. Né? So that's why young children can learn languages and stuff, and older people have more difficulty. And like if you drink lots or you get a knock on the head, then they die off faster. But what we've started to realize is that, well, I say we, but the clever brain surgeons and things, is your intelligence and your knowledge is not in the number of brain cells you have, but it's in the connections between them. So these brain cells form little networks, and that networks is when they communicate, they come up with ideas. So and the good news is you can be 90 or 105 and your brain cells can still be forming new connections. Not new brain cells, but new connections. Yeah. So what they go is, for instance, in the classic study, and maybe you've heard about this, is the one they do with London cab drivers. Do you know this one?
No.
So I don't know if you've ever been to London, yeah, but you've seen a movie in London.
I've been to Heathrow. I don't know if that counts
No.
for a layover.
Well, if you looked out the window, you would have seen this. They have all these little black cabs, black taxis. Yeah. You've seen this in Love Actually or some movie. Little black, like little hohaikis going up and down everywhere. Ne? And in order to be able to drive one of these, you need a special license, because London is not like Bloemfontein or Pretoria. That's a grid. It's like straight lines crossing each other. London kind of grew organically like an ant's nest over centuries. So the whole thing is a maze, of up and down hills and around corners. So it's really hard to navigate your way. So in order to get this license, these people need to pass an exam where they have memorized something like 15,000 different routes through London, And so what they do is they do brain scans of the people who drive these black taxis, and they find out that the part of the human brain which is in charge of navigating space and finding your way, in their brains, the number of connections between the brain cells there is exponentially more in anybody else. And they compare it to bus drivers, and bus drivers don't need to know any routes. They just sit there and press a button and the bus kind of goes its way, and nothing in their brain looks unusual. It's like a regular brain. And so they realize that by constantly, it's not like people who have this kind of brain tend to want to become taxi drivers. It's by constantly practicing, that part of the brain becomes stronger. And they do like the same thing then with loads of other people, violinists, who constantly use these fingers. The connection, the part of the brain that goes there, kind of it becomes much more active. So what they realize is you can literally take your brain to the gym. Like as you would, I want a bigger bicep, I do practice this and this again and again, my bicep grows. If you want certain mental capacities, you can literally, in the most physical, material way possible, practice these. But that's very different, and this is now I'm getting to your question. Can you sort of set the intention, I want to be mindful? Most people have, and most people find didn't quite work. The first time somebody gets you angry or something, then you're all over the place. So what you need to do is similarly, like you can't with a willpower get a big bicep. You have to literally practice this thing again and again. And then they go to people. So for some people, this is a loaded word, but the art of practicing mindfulness is what they call meditation. But you can also call it mindfulness exercise or whatever you want. And then they go to people who are seasoned meditators who spend hours a day doing this. And they do what they did with those London cab drivers. They put them in a CAT scan or something, and they look at their brain, and literally the parts of their brain which regulates contentment, presence, so on, is the parts of their brain like the amygdala, which runs your fight and flight and adrenaline reactions, that's much less active. So these people, when they get a skrik or they get angry, they don't immediately go into what, they kind of, okay, so here we are, what do we do now? Where do we go? And this kind of, it's not a sense of being calm, it's a sense of being present and being able to navigate the current moment. So you can do what you've suggested, but it's not a thing that, okay, I'm making a decision, this is how I'm going to be. It has to be a thing that you build into your life, that you continuously do this. So I mentioned one of saying, set little reminders in your day of gratitude, or choose an activity in your day that you'll be able to do mindfully. So what I say to myself when I see a red traffic light, instead, what do we do in a red traffic light? You pull out your phone, or you turn the knob on the radio. So on a red traffic light, can I take this moment and so be present? Come to my senses. What am I hearing? What am I feeling? What am I smelling? What am I doing? And similarly, another place where we tend to sort of really waste our time is when you're in the queue at a supermarket, like a Checkers or somewhere. People are pulling out their phone. So can I just stand and feel my feet on the floor, hear the different sounds, and then suddenly there's this whole sort of spectrum of sounds that was going on I never noticed. And it's not like it's necessarily then beautiful sounds or calming sounds, but I'm here. And so the more you do that, then you can kind of eventually, if you're sort of serious about this, get into the meditation thing and do regular sort of devoted times of effort where you kind of work on this mental capacity and practice it.
So what is the difference between mindfulness and meditation?
So they come from the same place. Yeah? I mean, mindfulness is a human capacity. You can be a member of some Sun tribe 500 years ago in the Kalahari who's never read a book about mindfulness, but you can be sitting there in the veld one day and be at peace with where you are between the animals and the field, and that's a mindfulness moment. Yeah. What meditation means is the actual technique of practicing mindfulness. If you then decide, I'm going to deliberately work on this thing. And so meditation, unfortunately in English, it has this dual thing, to meditate on something. And I think that's the biblical use of the word as well, I think, would be, I'm going to think this over and sort of analyze it and unpack it. Well, meditation in this sense, we should actually then get another word for it, yeah, is the practices that you do to sit and say, how can I just come to present? So many people will do a thing where they'll take 5 minutes or 10 minutes a day, just sit somewhere in silence and choose a thing to bring in the present moment, to bring their awareness to. So say, my breath is always there. So for 5 minutes, I'm only going to try and be with my breath. I'm not going to succeed because our mind is like a crazy monkey and runs away, but then when it has, come back to my breath. And so in the way that bicep constantly has to be picked up again and picking up, that act of bringing your awareness back towards your mind or towards the moment, taking that spotlight, shining it back here, that actually is the meditation. Now, just sort of like, because I think we have probably a wide range of people listening. And some people might like the word meditation, some might be skeptical or averse to it. So mindfulness practices, many people say, oh, I like this mindfulness, but I don't like meditation because I'm going to have to turn into a Hindu or move to the Himalayas or something, and they think that's it. Né? So that's not, so just to dispel that myth. Né? Yeah. There's a strong Asian tradition of meditation, and then it comes from like Japan and so on. You see these people sit cross-legged and stuff, and they're really good at it, and I really sort of find much value in learning from them. But we also have in the West also a very strong meditative tradition. We might have used different words. So you'd have in ancient times, you'd have what they call the church fathers, who were these people who lived out in the deserts and isolation in Egypt in some early Christian centuries, and they would sometimes call it things like centering prayer or contemplative prayer, where instead of like using the breath, they would use a word, say like Maranatha or some word, and they would say this again and again in their mind, and when their mind wanders, they would just bring their awareness back to it. So it's the same way of focusing it. In the last 2-3 centuries, unfortunately, in the West, we kind of lost the link to that, and so people had to go rediscover it in the East in the 60s, 70s, and bring it back. But I like the idea that many people are rediscovering sort of our more sort of local ways. I'm pretty sure I've spoken to people, there probably are some African indigenous variations of this as well. You know, I'm not an expert, but I've spoken to people who work with, as trackers and things for many generations, and who talk about the wisdom of the veld and how that teachers want to live in presence and so on. But I don't want to try and put it into my words because I don't know it well enough. But then what happened from the 1970s onwards is that clinical psychologists and neuroscientists have also picked up on this thing and started to study it, so that meditation becomes a thing which does not just happen in religious or spiritual contexts, but also very often in clinical contexts. So many psychologists nowadays might recommend a mindfulness practice. We teach here in Bloemfontein an 8-week course, Introduction to Mindfulness, that was designed by a doctor in Boston for stress management and that kind of a thing. So yeah, I hope I didn't veer too far away from your question.
No. I think one thing that I would like to, actually I think it's a follow-up question. I think you touched a bit on it. What are some and I'm speaking about today, like what are some misconceptions you think people have today when it comes to meditation?
I broached a big one just now that people will. I remember once I went to a meditation course and I came back and I was discussing it with a lady, a friend of mine, and she said to me, "Oh, so did you levitate?" And I said, "No, I didn't levitate. You know, like levitate." And
what is levitate?
Levitate is like when you fly up from the floor. And I said, "No, I didn't levitate." She says, "But then did you really meditate if you didn't levitate?" Because some people think you have to levitate, you know, or they think you have to go into a trance, or you have to sort of develop superpowers or something. Yeah. And I think that's from some like Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom or something. We see meditating people, or Tintin in Tibet. But it's the most concrete thing. It is the texture of the seat we're sitting on. Yeah. It is the look in your face. It is the sounds all around us in this room. This is it. So people tend to think of it, this is the misconception, they think of it as an out-of-body experience. Yeah. It's like you're going to fly away. Well, in fact, it is an in-body experience. Most of the time we are actually flying away. I'm here, but my mind is with something else, you know. I'm rehashing Seven Delon episodes, or I am fighting somebody, or I'm a pop star singing, you know, a duet with Miley Cyrus or somebody. But meditation is not actually come back. This is the miracle. This thing,
that's good.
You know? So you know, some teachers would say it's a wonderful miracle to be able to leave your body, but it's even better miracle to be able to be in your body and experience this thing. So that's a big misconception. And the other thing, we've touched on that as well, is people think it should feel nice. People think I should do it for stress reduction, and I'm going to do it and I'm going to have this floaty feeling. Well, you know, the present reality, if you come back to it, can be very challenging. And in the most aspects, we actually try and avoid it because it's too painful. And meditation is that brave act, or mindfulness is that bravery of saying, I know this is difficult, but I'm going to be with this moment. Sometimes the moment is too bad, you can't do it. You have to get away. But eventually, you're going to have to face up to your pain. You know, the opposite of mindfulness is sort of an addictive personality, I think. You know, because if you think about what addiction, I've been working lots of like addiction and speaking to people recently. What is addiction? Addiction is sort of the radical inability to be with the moment anymore. So I've been so pained that I end up getting drunk because it's the only way I can sort of forget this, you know, and become blind to it, you know. And this goes for addictions to substances, goes for addiction to shopping, addiction to pornography, addiction to drama and Skinner and all these things. There's this wonderful psychologist, Gabor Mate, from Canada, who works in addiction, who says when he treats a person with addiction, his first question is, what is it that you are trying to avoid? Which is, I mean, in my latest book, I have this really, really painful story about this woman who, she was, she started drinking at the age of 14. And she started to steal drink from her father's liquor cabinet. And she would go to school. She was like 15. She'd show up a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc already down by the time she got to school. The year she started drinking, she still has her old report cards. So her marks dropped from A to F, you know. Teachers writing, this is disgusting, what a disappointment you are, and that kind of thing. Because she seems like such a naughty child. But then the real story is that a year before 14, when she started drinking, a year before, she was sexually assaulted, you know. And this was in the 1980s. There weren't proper counseling services and things. And actually her wisdom said to her, I cannot deal with this pain now. Nobody's helping me, so I have to quieten it. And the only thing she could do was to start drinking, you know. Now, unfortunately, that's a very unhelpful way of doing it. And by the time she was 20, she was a full-blown alcoholic. And it took her 10 years or so to eventually get out of that cycle. But getting out of the cycle meant being willing, not dealing with the alcohol, but dealing with that pain underlying it. She's a mindfulness teacher now because she found that was the thing. I need to be, if I take away the liquor, then what's left is this scar. Now, this loss. I lost something when this horrible thing was done to me. And I have to be able to be with that pain. So many people, when they think mindfulness, they think of somebody sitting cross-legged on the beach in a shampoo ad and the wind blowing through their hair. But mindfulness can be being with that pain and that griminess, you know. She and she says now, and this is a thing for everybody, if I find myself doing something like watching series, binge watching, or constantly on Facebook, I just stop. What are you trying to avoid here? What are you trying to avoid? And so that for me is that's a helpful thing. I don't want to take this whole discussion about.
No, I think this is a very, very important direction because, and I actually have a theory about this. I just don't know if my theory is correct.
Okay.
So now I can maybe test it.
Give it to us.
So I've heard many people say, you know, I don't do this anymore. And I'm not speaking about drugs or pornography or something that we should avoid. I'm speaking about, you know, you'll get people who say, listen, I don't do this whatsoever because every single time I do it, I get triggered. Let me use an example that might not offend anybody. Let's say, for instance, I stop drinking coffee because every single time I have caffeine in me, I get triggered and I cannot stop myself. But my question is, as long as we are triggered and as long as we cannot stop ourselves, are we really healed?
Yeah.
That's basically my question. Shouldn't we come to that place where we say, listen, addiction doesn't have a hold on me because I've dealt with what I believe should be dealt with.
I think so. Look, here's an interesting thing: the theory of addiction. People classically we used to think a substance hooks you. A substance hooks you. So they'd say some people are just genetically disposed to alcoholism, they shouldn't drink. Some people are not, they're okay, they can have a beer and they'll be fine. Or they'd say heroin. You know, you remember at some point they say if you take heroin once, you're addicted, because it's so strong. But then you find people who use heroin and they're not addicted. I don't want to say anything dangerous, but you know, don't go and take heroin, please. But some people not, you know. So is it the substance? And the initial idea comes from this experiment was done in the 1940s or 30s even. A person who takes a rat in a cage and they give him 2 bottles of water, and the one is just clean water and the other one is water with cocaine. Lucky rat, so you can have regular water, cocaine water, and what this rat does is he chooses the cocaine water every time. And he drinks till he gets to the point where he ODs and he drops dead. So if given the choice, people will use cocaine and they will do it till they destroy themselves, But then, now I forget the guy's name, but I'll send it to you and we can post it somewhere. That went back like 20 years ago and said, but hang on. This rat sits in a cage all by itself, has no friends, no joy in his life, nothing to play with. What's he going to do? So he takes a rat, puts him in a cage, and there's lots of rat friends. They can chase each other, run around, and he gives them toys and a little thingy to run on, and then he gives them the 2 bottles. And that rat just couldn't be bothered with the cocaine. Doesn't feel nice, he doesn't want, it's unnatural, and he drinks the regular water, So what needed to be fixed was not in the thing, what needed to be fixed was this life, you know? And so, I don't know, I mean, I'm not an addiction expert, so don't check this with your doctor, before you act on it. But I find in myself, I get triggered when I go on news, but then I actually, and maybe you found it in yourself, when I'm really tired and my guards drop, I'll go on social media and I'll go and actually look for the things that offend me so I can go get angry, I don't like politician X, so I'll go and look up news about him so I can be angry with him, because somehow that presence which kind of keeps us in a constructive mode drops away, and then we go into these addictive behaviors and they bring out that hurt in an unproductive way.
So you say a person can actually get to that place where you go look for the thing that brings out your anger, you look for the thing that brings out your fear, you look for the thing. Wow.
But outrage is quite addictive as well. Now, when you're outraged, there's a dopamine shot. Because if I'm outraged, say I don't like, and this just as a hypothetical example, say for instance, if I didn't like Jacob Zuma, now I'll go look up Jacob Zuma, and then I'll be filled with righteous indignation. But that feels so good because the fact that I'm outraged about him means I'm better than him. You can only be outraged about somebody if you're better, if you know more than them. And so, I worked in journalism for most of my life, and we find the stories that people click on aren't the stories that they don't click on stories about people they agree with. They don't click on stories about people they disagree with, and that's what they want to read because it makes you feel angry, and that gets them worked up. And then that's a cycle. So that's another addiction, and that's a very dangerous one, being addicted to outrage media. Recreational outrage is the term for it.
So what you're saying is a person can actually get addicted to negative emotions.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, the drama. Hey, people like the drama.
Sure.
Definitely.
I don't know if you wanted to go here or you wanted to share this story, but I'm going to ask you. You didn't know I was going to. I didn't know I was going to ask this, but I think the time is appropriate because I watched one of your other videos where you told the story, and I'm just going to mention the story a little bit because I actually want you to tell it. Where somebody goes to a restaurant and they cannot decide what they want to eat. There's a state. Tell that story. I love that.
Well, it's an interesting study they did. So this is basically the mindfulness thing that they there's a thing in some restaurants. It's called a chef's table. I don't know if you know it. So you go to there's a special table. This is not if it's a well-known chef. This is not just now for the guy who flips burgers. It's not for like a guy who's a Michelin star chef or something, and he has a special table. And if you are like an honored guest, you can sit there, and then the chef works out a special menu just for you. So you're very grand. But there's no menu that you can choose from. He's worked out today we're eating this. And so they go and study people who eat at this place. So it seems weird because you go there, you can't choose what you're going to eat, you don't have any say, you just eat whatever they give you, but you believe in this chef because he has such a great reputation. And then so let's say for instance it's a pumpkin curry, and afterwards they say to people, what do you think about this pumpkin curry? And then they measure the levels of enjoyment. Then they go and they put the same chef in the other part of the restaurant, and they have pumpkin curry on the menu, but it's like, then you can choose it because it's below the ravioli and above the gnocchi and whatever. And then they go and talk to the people who ate the same pumpkin curry on the same night from the same dish, but chosen from the menu. And then these people it was kind of nice, but it was not as nice as it was for the people who didn't have a say. So this weird thing, why is it if you choose something, it's not as nice as if you didn't choose it? And I find that these people who chose it from the menu, the thing with them is they're constantly thinking, okay, I ate it, but now I wonder this lasagna that this person next to me had, shouldn't I have had this, or shouldn't I really have sort of had a salad? This thing might be so fattening, So there's constantly, what I said earlier, this weighing reality up against life as you think it should have been.
Like a comparison kind of thing,
If you take the mindfulness, if you take that thing away, then there's nowhere else to go but into this moment and find which they go, and this seems so counterintuitive, but and I suppose it's in many places, but in India, for instance, arranged marriages are quite a thing. So your parents will choose the person that you're going to marry. You don't go sort of shop around yourself. You'll get this. They're fascinating. They put like ads in the newspaper. This guy is looking for a bride now, and then people can apply. But then they go and measure not just the rates of success, how long these marriages last, but the contentment of people within this marriage. And this is a generalization, but for the most part, people in these arranged marriages are more content and happier with their partner than people in the West who chose their partner. Now, why would that be? Because if I'm now getting married to person X, who was, and I've been dating for 5 years before, constantly, person X, she's nice, but she doesn't do that nice thing that so-and-so did, or maybe I should have gone with that other option somewhere along the line. Well, if you get this one person that your parents chose for you, that's sort of the option, and there's just gratitude because that's all there is. And so in a certain sense, that's just a reminder. I'm not saying get into an arranged marriage, but what that says is...
But what you are saying is be content with what you have and don't compare it to what could have been. That's basically it.
So it's learning to focus on what you have, not in what you don't have. And very often, if I am unhappy, I have to sort of stop and say, is my focus on what I have in my life, or is my focus on what I don't have?
That's very good.
And I think this is quite a challenge, because I think many people have lost quite a lot, especially in the last 2 years or so, And so it's very natural to mourn something and to grieve what you lost, a marriage or a career or your health or a loved one or something. And so it's not that you shouldn't do that, but grieving has to be a process of eventually being able to let go and let be. And then there has to be a second part of the process, which needs to be a discovery of what is new in your life.
That's good.
So that you can grow into that, because we can be stuck in that and what used to be and not make that transition into the newness. Is that too abstract? Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, and that connects basically to resilience.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that if you can.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit of the resilience Grinch, to be honest, because I have a little bit of some trouble with that term, yeah? And I'm to talk quickly, depending how much time we have, but the term resilience comes from a term in physics. So resilience is an aspect of material that sort of can take its former shape again. So if you have a piece of plastic, it's resilient. You can twist it, but it kind of hops back to what it was before. Or if you can a metal that's resilient, if you hit a dent into it and you take your fist out, it bongs back to what it was. Yeah, so it's this idea that life's knocked you over, but you can bounce back to what you were before. And what I find, the people I've spoken to for this third book who went through major trauma, that's just not their experience at all. These things change you. You're not who you were before. And I say this hesitatingly, not to offend people, but I think people eventually realize that bouncing back also robs you to an extent of the opportunity of learning from that experience you went through and growing through that. So if I lost a limb, or if my marriage failed or something, the ability to allow myself to be changed by that and to have a sense of growth and more wisdom afterwards, which is a little bit of resilience, because it's a little bit different from resilience, yeah? Because I'm not going to be the person I was before, but if managed appropriately, I might be a wiser, kinder, in some cases. So there is this term in psychology. You've heard of post-traumatic stress, yeah? You've gone through a terrible thing, and then afterwards you have flashbacks and anxiety and sleeplessness. Post-traumatic growth is a thing they're starting to talk about, where you've gone through a trauma and somehow it has accessed something in you that changes you. So the term originally comes from studies they did of after the Vietnam War. And if you've seen Deer Hunter or some movie, some American soldiers, their plane was shot down and they were held by the Viet Cong in horrible prisons. They were tortured and psychologically harassed and everything for years on end, 5, 6, 7 years. And so they came home and people thought, well, this would be an ideal opportunity to study post-traumatic stress. Because these people are going to be just like the ghost of who they were before. But then they find, amazingly, that many of these people say, I'm actually now a stronger person than I was before. I'm actually now sort of more grateful for my life than I ever was. These people function a little bit better. Out of that small group, 2 of them became vice presidential and presidential candidates in the American national election. So this is like the top of people, So they thought this couldn't possibly be. And then they do repeat this among people who'd lost a family member to death, or people who had gone through divorce, and they find constantly, yes, a tragedy happened, and the next day I'm a stronger person, but if you can be courageous and sort of lean into that hurt in a wise, managed way, there's also some wisdom in your wounds that you can learn from there. And that wisdom doesn't mean you're going to be a richer person or a healthier person or something afterwards, but you might have a better conception of your own strength. You might have a better conception of the sources of strength outside of you, however you want to understand that, but sustain you. You might be more compassionate to other people who go through similar things, and that can be quite a term of growth. So I had this one friend, her mother was murdered brutally. It was a terrible story, and she was grieving, and people would say to her, okay, listen, it's been a year, you kind of need to get over this now. You need to be resilient, bounce back to the person we knew before who just smiled so easily. And she says at one point she thought to herself, what a waste of a tragedy. If I just sort of bounced back to who I was, what a waste. If I could use this thing to allow something in me to grow. And this is not to say that's going to happen to everybody. Yes, sometimes bad things happen and it really does break you, and that's understandable. But I think more and more, when I have difficult emotions, anxiety, or I'm really depressed or something, anger even, before I go into this thing, I don't want to feel it, and I try and shut it up with addictive behaviors or things. Can I say to myself, can I be with this, the mindfulness thing, even if it's uncomfortable? And can I ask myself, if this difficult emotion, if this was an expression of my deepest wisdom, what would it be that it is trying to tell me?
Sure.
And sometimes anger or fear is just a little voice inside you that says, hey, there's something that's precious that needs protecting. Mm-hmm. Or if your depression might just be something, listen, there's a lack of connection. Just listen to me. Try and find this connection again.
Sure.
And so take your medicines if you need them. If you listen to your doctor, take your medicines. But also be willing to do that work of leaning into the discomfort a little bit and saying, where can I grow from here? Because that thing in your life, which makes your life less than ideal, and everybody has that thing. Mm-hmm. There's that thing in you. Is very often also the thing that's going to unlock your wisdom and show you how you can be of value to the world.
Sure. And
to people who are hurting, I think.
So it's not just this thing about when we speak about resilience or when we speak about bouncing back.
Yeah.
It's not about bouncing back to your previous state.
Yeah.
But we can almost say bouncing back to a different state.
Yeah.
In the sense of, yes, there are some things that are hurting.
Yeah.
There are some things that are not the same. I maybe don't have the marriage anymore. I maybe don't have the limb anymore.
Yeah.
I maybe don't have this person in my life anymore, but I'm bouncing back to a state where I can use this to strengthen certain areas and to strengthen other areas and to use it in a certain way. That's the kind of bouncing back.
Yeah, there's a lovely book title called Bouncing Forward. It's a book about post-traumatic growth. To say, and you also find this in all the wisdom traditions. If you look at sort of the Bible, for instance, all those guys go through these terrible things, and then it transforms them. You see us in nature, animals that have to sort of break down in a cocoon before they can be something else. Snakes that have to shed their old skin and go through this thing before they can have a new one.
Wow, this is good.
And very often we are now in that space where we're like a reptile. We've shed our old skin. And we're still waiting for the new one to take shape, And we're like, how can I get my old skin back? But you don't want that, it was great, you had a good time in it, but that skin is now all maggoty and shrunken and gone grey. And so maybe you have to wait. And sometimes when bad things have happened, you're in this space where it is not possible yet for you to see the hope of what you're going to be. Mostly, you sit there and you think, I will never be happy again. There's nothing wrong with you if you feel that way. One goes through that. You think, in my case, I cannot see how my life can make sense again. And that's a normal part of the process, But then to still kind of let go of that old life and not try and crawl back to it, and surround yourself, if you can, with people who are able to see that hope, that flame of hope, which you at this point are not able to see, and who can hold that for you until the day happens. And this might be in 2 years from now. Unfortunately, it's not a fast way of speeding it up. It might be in 3 years from now, when you can start to see where that fits into the story of your life.
There's and I kind of want to land with this, like I said, if we can. I have to say, this is a person that I can speak to. I think if I'll speak to you for hours.
Yeah, we need to put a little alarm here or something.
I literally will. I can tell you, I'm really soaking in what you're saying. I'm like a sponge, and I really want to speak to you more, because the information you are giving is phenomenal, I have to say, and I do hope we can do this really, really, really again. There's a story, also for me as a Bible student, there's a story in the Bible that says, and I think this connects. I don't know if you know this story, but it says, do not put new wine into old wineskins.
I haven't even thought of that one.
You can lose both, and it's kind of like this whole idea. Don't try to take the new experience and go mix it with the old. You have to. And I was just thinking about that whole thing about shedding and getting rid of. And another thing that I was thinking about while you were speaking about dealing with things and how it's painful. when you go to for an operation, let's say for instance for your shoulder, I'm just using an example. Your shoulder kind of hurts, there's a problem, but now you go for an operation. But now after the operation, it hurts 10 times more than what it hurt before the operation. And it's kind of like sometimes you have to go through that, you have to focus on that, and you have to feel that pain for a while, really to grow and to become better.
But it takes courage.
It does.
And it takes patience, and it takes some kind of faith in the idea that there is hope on the other side. And so what we're saying, if anybody tuned into this thing thought it was going to be mindfulness and thought it would all be like float in the clouds and how to create a happy space, this is difficult work. And this is painful work, but this is the work, this is the way, I think, towards a life that is meaningful and a life that is of value, not just to yourself but the world around you. And that's why I'll keep on trying to advocate for it, and we can do that here or somewhere else again in future.
I would love that. Johannes, this was really, really brilliant. I knew it was going to be good. I didn't know it was going to be this good. I have to say, like, you are a person that I'm really glad. I'm glad about everybody, but like we've met recently. We don't know each other very long, and the information you gave today, and I've been studying on these things. I've been reading up on these things. You've made statements today that really blew my mind. I really believe it blew the mind of many, many people. And I want to tell you to get this book. If you can speak the language, and I know a lot of you can, I want you to get this book. We're going to put Johannes' email address on the screen. You can contact him via email. I do believe this is going to help you a lot. I'm really, my mind is really blown. Thank you so much for being on our channel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for watching.
I know, this is going to change many lives. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for leave a comment. It helps us. Thank you so much. Thank you, Johannes. This was really, really amazing.
Thank you.
You really inspired us, and you really gave us such good information.
Good way to spend an hour.
Thank you. This was amazing. Love you guys. I'll see you soon again on our next video. We're going to have another interview with Yualita. I'll see you guys for that interview next week. Goodbye.